Why avoidance can't handle super empath detachment? It starts quietly. The avoidant doesn't expect it. They believe the empath will always be there, patient, forgiving, endlessly understanding. For a long time, that's true. The empath tries to bridge every silence, calm every storm, and love through every wall. But something shifts when a super empath awakens. There's a moment when they stop trying to save the avoidant and start saving themselves. And that moment, that silent withdrawal of emotional energy, is the one thing an avoidant cannot handle. Because when a super empath detaches, it's not anger, it's indifference. And for someone who feeds on control and emotional distance, that indifference is like losing oxygen. You see, avoidants thrive in emotional imbalance. They maintain control by keeping others slightly anxious, slightly uncertain. They know how to keep love just out of reach, enough to make you chase, enough to keep you hooked. But when a super empath detaches, the game ends. Suddenly, the avoidance emotional power supply, the empathy, the patience, the emotional availability disappears. The super empath no longer reacts, no longer seeks closure, no longer plays the invisible tug of war. And for the avoidant, that silence is not peace, it's panic. They built their identity around emotional control, and now they're facing someone who doesn't need their approval anymore. That's terrifying. At first, the avoidant might convince themselves that they don't care. They'll act unbothered, even relieved. They might even tell themselves, "Finally, I'm free." But deep down, something feels off. Because the super empath's energy isn't like anyone else's. It's not chaotic or dramatic. It's grounding. It makes people feel seen and safe, even when they don't admit it. And when that energy is gone, the avoidant starts to feel the emptiness of their own emotional world. The silence they once loved now echoes too loudly. The solitude that used to feel safe now feels hollow. That's when the realization begins. The empath didn't just love them, they stabilized them. And now that stability is gone. Super empaths are different because they don't just feel deeply, they understand deeply. They see through patterns, through defense mechanisms, through masks. They understand that the avoidance withdrawal isn't rejection, it's fear. They can sense the avoidance longing, even when it's buried under distance and detachment. But here's the thing. Once the super empath learns to stop personalizing that behavior, the entire dynamic changes. They stop chasing validation from someone emotionally unavailable, and that's when they become untouchable. The avoidant, who once held power through silence, now faces a silence they can't control. A silence that mirrors their own emotional emptiness back at them. When a super empath detaches, they don't slam doors or make scenes. They simply disappear. Mentally, emotionally, spiritually. They might still answer your texts, they might still be polite, but their emotional energy has left the building. And that subtle shift is brutal for the avoidant, because emotional detachment is their coping mechanism, their shield, their safety zone. But when it's used against them, calmly without bitterness, it disarms them completely. The avoidant is used to dealing with emotional chaos. They know how to block tears, avoid confrontation, and freeze people out. But how do you defend yourself against someone who's not fighting anymore? Someone who no longer wants to fix you, chase you, or understand you. The avoidant realizes too late. The super empath's silence isn't punishment, it's peace. It's also deeply triggering for the avoidant's core wound, the fear of being unwanted. Remember, avoidants often come from backgrounds where love felt unsafe or conditional. They learned early that closeness equals pain, so they built walls. But when a super empath detaches, those walls suddenly trap the avoidant inside their own loneliness. The empath is gone, yet their energy lingers, like a ghost of what once could have been. The avoidant begins to replay memories, wondering where they lost control. They start checking the empath's social media, testing boundaries, sending casual "hey" texts. Not because they want to reconnect emotionally, but because they can't stand the feeling of being irrelevant. The super empath's detachment exposes the avoidance illusion of control for what it truly is: fear dressed as independence. And here's the deeper truth. When a super empath detaches, they mirror the avoidance behavior, but with consciousness. The avoidant withdraws from fear, The empath withdraws from strength. One runs to avoid pain, the other walks away to protect peace. And that's the difference. The empath's detachment comes from emotional growth, from realizing they can't save someone who refuses to meet them halfway. The avoidant, on the other hand, detaches to avoid vulnerability. So when the empath finally uses detachment as a boundary, not a reaction, the avoidant feels the sting of their own medicine, and it burns. The most painful part for the avoidant isn't losing the relationship. It's losing how the empath made them feel. Avoidants rarely experience unconditional emotional presence. The super empath gave them that, a rare kind of love that made them feel safe, accepted, even when they couldn't express it. And now that emotional mirror is gone. Without it, the avoidant is forced to confront themselves. They start realizing that all their emotional distance didn't protect them. It just kept them from experiencing real intimacy. And ironically, it's the empath's final act of detachment that becomes their teacher. For the super empath, detachment is not coldness, it's clarity. It's the recognition that love doesn't mean self-abandonment. It's the understanding that sometimes the most powerful form of love is to walk away, not in anger, but in self-respect. Super empaths don't stop caring overnight. They just stop trying where there's no reciprocity. They realize that their energy, their empathy, is sacred, and that pouring it into someone who fears love is like watering a stone. Eventually, the super empath learns to give that love back to themselves, and that's when they become unstoppable. What follows next is fascinating. The avoidant starts feeling drawn back, not out of love, but out of curiosity and confusion. They start asking, how can someone who cared so much suddenly stop? They don't understand that for a super empath, detachment doesn't come easily. It's the result of countless disappointments, unanswered messages, and emotional exhaustion. It's a quiet decision to choose peace over potential. And once they reach that point, there's no coming back. Because when a super empath detaches, they don't do it halfway. They do it completely. They may still wish the avoidant well, but the emotional door is closed. Ironically, this detachment often triggers the avoidant's biggest fear, the fear of being truly seen and then abandoned. Because deep down, avoidants crave love just like anyone else. They just fear it more. And when someone sees them, truly sees them, and still walks away, it cuts deep. It exposes the truth that all their emotional games were just armor. The super empath didn't destroy them. They exposed them, and that exposure feels unbearable. That's why avoidants can't handle super empath detachment. It leaves them face to face with themselves, without the emotional distraction of someone trying to fix them. In the end, the story between a super empath and an avoidant isn't about who wins or loses. It's about awakening. The avoidant is forced to confront their emotional walls, and the empath learns to honor their emotional boundaries. The detachment isn't revenge, it's evolution. It's the moment when love stops being about rescuing someone else and starts being about respecting yourself. And maybe, just maybe, that's the lesson both were meant to learn. That true connection can only exist when both people are free, not from each other, but from their own fear of love.